All right, I'm back. I'm so sorry. We're trying to make this work. How are you, everybody? And I'll repeat it from a while ago. If you have not been outside, even today, I know in our area it's a little bit cold and icky, but make sure you're getting outside. All right, it's so good for you and good for your kids, and go on a walk and see what's new and green and coming out and listen to the birds and all that good stuff. I'm so happy that I get a chance to be back with you guys today. I have a couple of things I want to share with you, and it's not going to be as long as it was last time, I promise. I talked way too much, and I didn't want to do that. Mostly, I just want to check on you. Use the emojis down here and tell me how you're doing. I want to make sure that you're okay. I'm sending lots of hugs, and if we could, how about virtual kisses out to you, because our family cares about you and we want you to be your very, very, very best emotionally and physically and psychologically, all right? I'm going to be sharing several things today, stuff for even little people, all the way up through 8th grade. So if you know anybody that you think might be interested or might be helped by this, make sure that you're tagging them, or later, the rebroadcast, because this, I'll save this and you guys can share it with friends and they can watch later. But for right now, here's what I'd like to start with. Let me share a link with you from a professional whose name is Kristen Mraz. And let me find it because it's going to be important. And then what I'll do is I will link these a little bit later. Let me turn the camera around. I will link these a little bit later. So Kristen Mraz has put together basically this entire play packet. Included in the packet are directions, play areas and ideas, play planning, and even a reflection sheet for how it went, and maybe ideas you can get for your own kids. Some tips for talking to your children about their play. And this is my favorite part because we've all heard it. Tips for helping your child when they say, I'm done or I'm bored. Oh, Lord help us. So you can see here she's got very simple directions. She adds an extension. She's got some suggested play choices. It is fabulous. I love how simple she's made it. So you're going to want to make sure that you take advantage of this. Really and truly, no matter what the age of your kids, because if you've got all the way up to about a 2nd grader or a 3rd grader, these would be great ideas for you just to kind of spark your own imagination about maybe some extensions that you could make. Let me get back to that document and I'll share the second link, which, remember, again, I'll put these later in the rebroadcast. It's just a calendar of virtual field trips that families can take for the month of March and April. And I really appreciate that they've included so many great things here. Links directly to these places, both in the U.S. and in other countries. So all the way for the 2 months of April and May. So I'll include both those links. It'll be nice for you to have a chance to be able to see that. All right. So the next thing I'd like to share with you guys, forgive me for just a second while I get over here in my photos. Whoops, that's not exactly how I wanted it to look, but we'll give it a try. So one of the things I did with my grandsons and my granddaughter this week, let me make that a little bit bigger, was to call them, FaceTime with them, and just walk through some writing with them. We had such a great time. So one of the things I wanted them to think about was, what could they see out in their outdoor environment, and then what could they do? How could they turn that into a journaling opportunity? So Asher Kingsley is 5, and what he chatted with me first because I like for him to talk through it. Like, talk to me about what you think you want to get down in your journal. It's really good for kids to have a chance to kind of talk it through at first, because that helps them organize their thoughts. And if they're struggling a little bit, then you can ask good questions, and then you can just repeat to them what that might look like. Asher struggled a little bit. He just wanted to tell me that he rode his bike. And I said, when did that happen? And he said, today. And I said, oh, for sure you're going to want to put that in your sentence. So we know you want to say today. And then what else do you want to say? That I rode my bike That's awesome. Were you at home or were you somewhere else? No, I was at Gia's house. That's his maternal grandmother. She lives really close to them and they get to go see her a lot. So I said, let's see if we can put all of that together. When you wrote it, what you did, and where you were. And that little rascal came up with this sentence: today I rode my bike at Gia's house. And then I asked him to illustrate it for me. Okay, now this is what's funny. It makes people really nervous because things aren't spelled correctly. Can I tell you something? That doesn't matter. There's something called approximation. And what I want to say to him is, he said, well, I need to feel like I'd done enough. And look, he spelled Gia's house. Close. Approximation. That's good. Do you see the things already, even as a parent, that I might be able to help my child with? Like maybe I want to show my child the word day in a book in following days and say, let's go back to your writing because I think you had the word today in your writing. Let's take a different colored marker. How would you fix the word today now that you've seen day and you know how to fix that? So these are fun ways that we can get our kids writing, and then fun ways that we can go back and actually help them, which I think is really powerful. So let's look at a first grade experience. Second grade. Let me get our other grandson's work up here. And then I'll show you our third grade granddaughter. I believe this is his. Nope, wrong one. Is this it? Okay. So here we go. So let me turn my phone around so you can see this. So Shepherd Carrick is 8 years old. And I know you may not be able to see this, but I asked him the same thing. Tell me about something that you've seen or done outside. And he said, well, when we went down to the creek, Daddy and I saw some crawdad holes. And I said, oh my gosh, those are so fun. Did you see any crawdads? And he said, no, we didn't see any crawdads, but we saw 3 or 4 of those. And I said, now tell me when this was. And he said, yesterday. And I said, oh, that's a great way to start your writing in your journal. So I'm going to read this. I know you may not be able to see it, but he said, yesterday, me and Daddy saw a crawdad hole, exclamation point. That was really important to him for me to know that it was going to be an exclamation point. And then he goes on to say, we saw 3 or 4 crawdad holes, but we did not see any crawdads, but we had to cross the river. It's actually a stream. Don't want you to feel like they're taking their children through rivers. So he illustrated it for me, and you can see the stream. Now, what I get so tickled at is look at his illustrations here. This is him, and this is Daddy. But look how he's showing us in his illustration that they were on the other side of the stream. That tickles me. So there were some things that I could have helped Shepherd Carrick with a little bit later, going back and actually doing a little bit of editing and revising. But the most important part is there's a brilliant man who's written tons about how to write with children. His name is Ralph Fletcher, and he wrote a book called Joy Write. And one of the things he talks about is we need to give kids the opportunity to do greenbelt writing. So let's think about how greenbelt writing is different from prompt writing. If I take my kids to the park, there's all kinds of structured activities. That would be more like asking a student to write to a prompt. But if I turn a kid loose in a greenbelt, what are they going to do? They're absolutely going to explore. They're going to make their own choices. They're going to live it up out there playing like kids do best. So he's transferring that, Ralph Fletcher, to how we ought also to provide for kids opportunities for greenbelt writing, which is no parameters, just asking them what it is that you want to write about today. And sometimes they don't know. So that's why I help the boys by saying, I know you've been outside lately. What have you seen or done that you could write about in a journal? And so that was our experience with the boys. Eleanor Ray, who is 9, she's been very busy. So she wasn't exactly sure that she wanted to engage in this writing experience with me. But she did say, well, I could talk about some things I've seen in nature. So Eleanor is 9, and she shared, I like nature. I played a game with nature, specifically 3 flowers, 2 rocks, 1 stick, 3 leaves, and 2 dandelions. Now, again, Eleanor got to write about what she was observing or doing out in nature. Other than being outside, that was the only suggestion made. But do you see also how maybe I could go back a little bit later, and if I'm working with her as a grandparent or a parent, I could even talk to her about combining sentences. Isn't that powerful that she used the word specifically and then she set that off with a comma? And use commas in a series well, too. I don't have to know that as a parent, but one of the things I could ask is, what else did you do with those 3 flowers, 2 rocks, 1 stick, 3 leaves, and 2 dandelions? I'm your reader and I want to know more. So do you see how we can also send kids back to have a chance to add more to their writing? So that's the writing. I do want to share with you, I also called, I have 2 4-year-old grandsons. One was interested, one was not, and that's okay. All right, but the one that was interested, I was trying to give him parameters about something he had said or done outside, and he wasn't going for that. He told me he had a story to tell me, so I would like to read you his story. There was once a king named Owen, and he liked everything that he did, but there was one thing he didn't like. It was candy. If he had dinner, then he had to have a dessert. There was one thing he loved but couldn't do. He couldn't go to his play place because there was a sicky bug. So he snuggled his stuffed dog Biscuit. The end. I wrote all that out for him, and I wrote each sentence on a separate page and gave it to him folded in a book that could be stapled together so he can go back and illustrate. He can put a cover on that book. He can design a title, a cover page with an illustration, and Mom and Dad can help him write the title, the author, and the illustrator. These are just some ideas that I wanted to share with you guys about how we can go all the way through these early grades. Let me share with you, if I can find it, an example of something that an older student might share. Also, kids older, like let's say 5th through 8th grade, don't necessarily have to write about going out of doors. One of our grandkids, our 9-year-old, loves to listen to kids' podcasts. And so I might challenge her, what would you like to tell us about what you observed or heard or really enjoyed in the podcast? And just write about that quickly in your journal. So here's an example of Mercedes, who's 11. And she shared that since we had to shelter in place, my mom makes my brother and me do schoolwork in the morning and then do chores after lunch. I didn't think it was a good idea, but one of our chores is working with Mom in the backyard. My mom knows a lot about plants. Yesterday, she made us pull up weeds, but today we got to plant seeds in these little cardboard containers to grow for a while until they're big enough to put in the flower bed. My brother and I had to dig some old stuff and move it to a different place where she showed us. Some things I planted for her last week are sending up green shoots. That's what Mom calls them. Don't tell anybody, but now I go out every day to see if there's any new green stuff coming up. Don't tell anybody either that I kind of like the gardening chore. So you see how simple it can be? And Mercedes decided not to write. She typed hers into a Word document. So these are things that kids can be doing. And this can also be, it can be if you're worried about your kids not doing enough writing. It can also be if your kids are done with some of their work and you just still want them reading and writing, and you can offer these opportunities for kids. But I just wanted to share those with you. I'm trying to remember what else it is that we said we'd talk about today. Oh, I shared the writing. I shared the play activities with you from Krista Mraz. And remember, I'll be adding those links to this Facebook Live comment section below. So come back for those and share those with your friends. Do something else for me too. The more you comment, the more widely this can be seen. You can comment or react. So that would help me. Anything you can do like that would be helpful. I'm trying to now find our resources for, let's see if I can find it, for nonfiction. And I know last week we had talked about some people were interested in nonfiction ideas for kids, and so I'm going to throw this out here when you are helping your students, and this can be from ages 4 or 5 all the way up through 8th grade. I'm going to show you in a minute my little notebook entry I have for how you can break this down even for younger kids. I'm going to show you some samples in a book, and then I'm going to also in the comments below, once this is rebroadcast, once I've saved it, and it's available to view, then I will also put some links to a blog post I wrote that would give you some more information, more than you're going to get today in the Facebook Live, okay? Even if you're a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver or an auntie or an uncle or a next-door neighbor, and you're trying to help folks out with school, this will be helpful. So one of the things I want you to realize is when we read nonfiction, we need to be paying very close attention to three things. And as we're reading, we should be able to identify those things. This is what our brain does. Even now as an adult, you do this. So if that's certainly the process that we go through as adults, it's what we want to walk young children, upper elementary children, middle school kids, even high school kids through if we're trying to help them. So the first thing that has to happen is when we're reading nonfiction, we have to identify the topic. And one of the things I've done here is to assign emojis, not emojis, but symbols here. So if I'm trying to identify the topic and I've got to complete that here on this graphic organizer, I want to do two things. I want to ask myself a question, and then I want to know where to look. So the question I ask myself is, so what is the subject that the author is writing about here? And then the next thing I want to be able to know is, so where do I look if I've asked myself that question? Well, the first place we want to look is we want to look in the title, okay? Because a lot of times authors are really helpful. I'll show you an example of a great book that's here at our house. It's called All About Turtles. So do you see if I look in the title, it's really clear what the topic is, and I want to be able to say the topic in just one or two words. The topic is turtles, all right? So that's important for me to know, because in order to find the central idea, I need to know the topic. So I'm going to look at the title. If it's not clear in the title, then the next thing I want to do is to scan the article or the book, and I want to look for repeated words. Well, in my book, All About Turtles, guess what? On every page, I see the word turtle several times. So those two tips, look in the title and then quickly scan the article or the book for repeated words, are going to help me come up with the topic. Remember that it's only going to be one or two words. So I know now that my topic is turtles, okay? So if I want to find the main or the central idea, then look, here's my icon, and then here's where I look for support with my graphic organizer. So the question I want to ask myself is, so what does the author want me to know about the topic? Well, I know the topic is turtles. So now my question is, so what does the author want me to know about turtles? Well, then I'm going to be able to say, guess what? In this particular book, the author wants me pretty much to know everything there is about turtles. How they live, what they eat, what their shell looks like, the different types of turtles, but I need to be able to say that here in a sentence. So remember, the question I asked myself is, what does the author want me to know about the topic? The topic here is turtles. And if I'm just looking for the central idea in a paragraph, look, this is great because the author holds to conventions that say he needs to state it in the first or the last sentence. But if I'm looking for the central idea in an article or a book, a paperback book or a hardback book, then I want to pay close attention to the information in the heading sections. Okay, that's in an article. But can I tell you something? One of the things I want to pay attention to even in my book, All About Turtles, is just the page spreads. That would be enough for me to pay attention to. So let me give you an example here. I'm trying to find my page spread. So remember, if I'm looking for the central idea for this section, I can see that on this page, it's not a heading section because it's not an article, but it's a two-page spread, and I can now tell you what the central idea is for this two-page spread. It's that there are a lot of different types of turtles in the world. Okay? Now, let's take this as an example and look on, because the next part of paying close attention to nonfiction text is the supporting details. So if I have the central idea correct, then my supporting details are going to hold that up just like the legs on a table, all right, to support the tabletop. So back to our two-page spread that we said the central idea that the author's putting forth here is that there are a lot of different types of turtles in the world. Then he breaks that down. He says they fall into groups: freshwater turtles, saltwater turtles, and land-dwelling turtles. So what's great is now I can go back here and very quickly I can say, here are some supporting details that help to hold up the idea that this 2-page spread is mainly about, the central idea is that there are different types of turtles in the world. Remember what we said? There are land-dwelling turtles, there are freshwater turtles, and there are saltwater turtles. And to help me, now I can make a list of those that are included in this 2-page spread. So do you see how important it is for me to be able to hold all of this information in my head as I read? All right? Just for the supporting details, just as with the other parts, ask yourself what parts of the text help to hold up the central of the main idea. Where do I look? I look for supporting evidence throughout the selection that's going to support the central idea. All right? Now watch this. When I'm finished, I can go back and use my graphic organizer to actually summarize. I can say, this great book all about turtles, that was my topic, all about turtles, shares all types of information about turtles around the world. That's the central idea. Okay? And then I'll have my supporting details here that help hold up that main idea or central idea. So once I've used this graphic organizer to capture my thoughts as I read, or sometimes we can read through it and then go back and revisit. That's really helpful. But when reading nonfiction, kids need to be able to tell you the topic, which, remember what I said, typically is 1 or 2 words. Then they need to be able to know that the topic is what the author wants you to know more about. So I get to ask that question for central idea. What does the author want me to know about the topic? And remember today from this book it was turtles. And then what are some details that help hold up that main idea? All right? So I'm going to include this graphic organizer in the links also, so that you're able to use this. It is so very helpful for kids, and I hope maybe you'll even play around with it a little bit as an adult. Read an article, kind of test me on this and say, is this really how we think as we read? And it is. We identify the topic. We ask ourselves, what's the author wanting me to know here about the pandemic? Or what's the author wanting me to know here about the planting zone that I live in, and which plants are most likely to grow and flourish in my plant growing zone. I've been doing a lot of that this week, checking that out, since I work in my gardens late in the evening. But I know that when I'm reading something, I'm holding that information in my head by saying, I know the topic. I'm coming to understand what it is the author wants me to know about the topic, and now I'm seeing these supporting details. And if I had to tell it back to someone, I would do that with that structure. All right? So if you have found this helpful at all, give me a thumbs up, give me a heart, something, some kind of a signal that you've enjoyed our time together today. I want to remind you that I am not an expert. I've just been on about a 40-year journey of teaching kids to read in grades K through 8, pre-K through 8. And I know you're on a journey, and I just want to share some of the spots I've stopped along the way and some things I've found helpful on that journey. So I'll be back next Friday, and one of the things I want to share with you again is about nonfiction text. And I know it's in our new standards for Texas, so it's important for families and caregivers to know about this. But not only do authors, not only when we read nonfiction do we need to decide the topic, the main idea, and supporting details, but we need to also be really aware of the structures that authors are using. Are they presenting this to me in a problem solution? Are they showing me cause and effect? Are they giving a description? Are they showing me something in a time order sequence? It's really, really important for us to know those things, because once again, as we read, we have to hold that information in our heads so that our comprehension is deep, and so that we'll be able to remember the article, so that it or book or short paragraph, so that we can make meaning from there, because that is the ultimate goal of reading. All right. I've probably taken more time than I meant to, but I wanted to share those things. Be looking for the links, and I'll be back next Thursday or Friday I'll put it out on Facebook, a little warning about when I'll be on. But thank you so much. I see all of these people that are watching right now, and I'm sending you a little wave. Let's see if I can do it and catch everybody. I might not be able to catch everybody, but thank you so much for watching. And remember, make sure you share this with anyone that you think might need this support right now during all the shelter-in-place schooling that's having to go on. Our family cares about you. We love you guys. We're wishing you well every single day, that you're feeling well and that you're enjoying the little pleasures in life, even in this really tough time. Okay? Sending hugs and virtual kisses. You guys take care.